The work as an astute fantasy hockey GM never stops. And we're back, baby, with all of the winners and losers from the latest week of free agency that's going to impact your squad. We're breaking it all down on today's episode.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get back after it, my hockey degenerates. We are here on the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, ready to bring you all of the angles that are going to help your team succeed in the upcoming draft window. Thank you so much for joining us for Monday's episode. We are happy to be back, and Mr. Roden covering everything that you need to know from NHL free agency so far, winners and losers. Shout out to the everydayers holding us down, making us your first listen every single day. Right now, we're a little bit all over the place, but we will be here for all of your summer hockey needs. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, where right now, you know what's good. New customers get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 wager hits. Steele, thank you for rejoining me. I appreciate it. I've missed you, my friend. Look, every year, free agency window, there's a lot going on. This year, 117 contracts signed on July 1. Over $660 million in cash handed out. But there's fantasy fallout. Winners, losers. Some teams not doing so well. Kings, Oilers, and Jets. Canes, Habs, and Cats. Over to you, my friend. Who do you want to talk about? I'm ready to go.
Well, let's start.
He's back.
Let's start with the Eastern Conference teams. A few winners from this free agent frenzy already in July. Carolina Hurricanes, Montreal Canadiens, and we've already talked about the Florida Panthers, but we can touch on them again. Carolina Hurricanes, they get pretty much one of the top 5 unrestricted free agents going into the market this season in Nikolai Ehlers. They end up signing him to a very, very good contract, 6 years, $8.5 million for a total of $51 million for Nikolai Ehlers over the six years he will be in Carolina. And yeah, it's interesting because this is a player that we've talked a little bit about with his injury concern over the last few seasons. I know he played a full 82 games in 2023-24 and had 61 points. You know, he's been a perennial 55, 65 point player. And for me, this is the Carolina Hurricanes to me are the Eastern Conference's Winnipeg Jets. I mean, they have very identical cultures, game styles, coaching experience as well. We love Brind'Amour, but to me, this is a lateral move for Nikolai Ehlers. I'm not saying it's going to, affect his fantasy value horribly or anything. I actually think he's going to do very well fantasy hockey wise, because when you look at what he did again this past year, 63 points in 69 games. He was on pace for being he was on pace for a career high, or even higher than he was on pace for a career high. He was finishing on pace around 75 points, I believe it was, if he played a full 82 games, 70, 75 points, blocks, hits. Not going to get much out of that, but again, career high for shots on net if he plays the full 82 games. So this is intriguing to me. I think this might have some downfall as well for maybe a guy like Andrei Svechnikov if he gets shifted around a little bit. If Ehlers goes on that top line. I also want to throw out there the Logan Stankoven signing, 8 years, $6 million, $48 million.
That makes them a winner, total. In my opinion, Steve.
I think, that makes them a winner as well, because I thought he was fantastic in the playoffs. He's still a 21-year-old kid right now.
Good
and
player.
he had 9 points in 19 games in the regular season. Playoffs come around, 8 points, 5 goals in 15 games. So Logan Stankoven for me is a very interesting one as well. That's a player that I would be willing to take a shot on, really in the later stages of the draft. But again, Nikolai Ehlers, when you look at his point production, 5-on-5, point per 60, he's right up there with the best in the league right now. His Corsi 4 as well. He stands out 5-on-5. I think that makes the Carolina Hurricanes a winner. And then I really want to talk about the Montreal Canadiens after your points on this Carolina Hurricane team.
I can't wait to talk about the Montreal Canadiens. Let me get this out of the way, though, because we always try and bring a little bit of a betting angle on our shows. By the way, 30 minutes in and out every single day. That's what we try to bring to you guys. Carolina right now, Steele, at FanDuel Sportsbook. Shout out to our boys at FanDuel. Plus 750, Steele. Only the Florida Panthers have shorter odds at plus 700 as Stanley Cup quote-unquote favorites for next season. Little bit of an intriguing angle. This Carolina Hurricanes team we know has hung their hats in the defensive zone. And I think as much as I definitely love the Ehlers move, this is Seth Jarvis and Sebastian Aho's team up front. Anything that you get from Nikolai Ehlers this upcoming season, whether he plays alongside those two or he fits into somewhere on that second line, which I think Logan Stankoven should probably anchor the right side, that would be bonus. And let me leave it at this. When I do look at this Carolina team, truly and honestly, I love Keandre Miller's signing for their impact on the ice. Fantasy, we need to see what happens. But I think this is an improved club. The goaltending we like. Freddie, if he stays healthy. We love what Kochetkov can do in at least a supporting role. To me, this is a winning team, especially after they signed Logan Stankoven in terms of locking down a good young player. Fantasy gems. Everyone we just mentioned, Steele, to me, given that responsibility on the defensive end, you got to be going after a bunch of these guys. I see another big year from Seth Jarvis. I don't need to go down that angle, but I would like to, if you're okay with this Montreal Canadiens team. And let me bring this up right here because the last 7 days have been busy, no doubt. But when you see a list like this for the Montreal Canadiens, let me hit you with this. Montreal Canadiens core, 25 and under. Nick Suzuki, Noah Dobson, Cole Caulfield, Lane Hudson, Ivan Demidov, Yurei Slavkovsky, Caden Gooley, Jaden Struble, David Reinbacher, and now also Zach Bolduc Steele. And I'm going to leave it at this. Can somebody throw a little bit of respect and fantasy value on Zachary Bolduc's name? Number one, he is a Quebec native. He's a first-round draft pick, Steele, and last year, in only 12 minutes of ice time, 108 hits, 36 points, 37 penalty minutes. I don't want to get overly excited about a player that only has 97 games under his belt. The Montreal Canadiens are a big winner so far, and they are, and I know you'll back me here, a fantasy goldmine.
Yes, they really are. And, you know, we love to talk about the general managers across the National Hockey League.
Yes, we do.
Jim Nill as well. I think we got to give a shout out to Kent Hughes out there. You know, again, Jim Nill, Bill Zito. Kent Hughes has done a phenomenal job so far this offseason in acquiring guys like Noah Dobson, Zachary Bolduc. And again, we talked about him last year and what he brings to banger leagues.
I like this player, Steele.
Blocks, 120 shots, 36 points in 72 games. Plus 20, 37 penalty minutes. Like, this kid really does have it all, and he's only 21 again. So they just continue to add on from these guys 25 years and younger. Suzuki, Slavkovsky, Caulfield, Demidov, Bolduc, Newhook, Evans. Like, Dobson.
Don't forget about Jake Evans either.
Yeah, Jake Evans, the goaltending in Montembeault, they re-signed Jacob Dobish to under $1 million. They bring in Capo Kakinen as a third-string goaltender as well. This team is a fantasy goldmine now. And I will say, like, the one thing, and I believe from my understanding that they are still trying to get something done. But, you know, there was a lot of rumors out there about Montreal taking a heavy swing for Jordan Kyrou. That's the one area I would like them to see address at some point. And, you know, we can talk about this a little bit after the break, but I want to talk about Montreal and Jordan Kyrou as well as we will get to the losers of the free agency so far this offseason. Kings, Oilers, Jets, swing and a miss. We're going to break it all down for you. But after the break, we'll continue with the Montreal Canadiens and all of their signings.
And a little bit of love for the Florida Panthers, because my goodness me, if there's a maestro in that front office, Steele, we loved behind the bench in the front office. It's Billy Zito on a heater. We hope to do the same the rest of today's episode and the rest of the week. Shout out to FanDuel Sportsbook. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Summer sports, they're in full swing. And whether you're all about that baseball under the lights, golf on the green like we are here, or high-stakes soccer action, FanDuel is the best way to get in on every single game and make them more exciting. You've been following the action, but what's a little bit more thrilling with FanDuel, you get in on every single game while your friends are getting sunburned on the beach. I don't know about you, Steele, but I'd rather make a few bets by the bar than get toasted on the beach. And I've been using FanDuel to track my favorite matchups, and the app keeps it fresh with new daily promotions, fun ways to bet nonstop. New to FanDuel, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets right back in your account if that first bet hits. Open the FanDuel app today, use FanDuel.com if not, and get started right now.
Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. Continuing, though, on the conversation of this Montreal Canadiens, I mean, they've done a fantastic job. Them even, in the postseason against the Washington Capitals, they gave it their best, but just wasn't able to accomplish that. And again, they're still continuing to grow, to develop. But back to Jordan Kyrou, I'm really not quite sure what's going on in St. Louis for them to really consider that.
Good point.
I still like what they've done, and I still like the look of their team, but why even bother or why even go through that process of actually considering trading a guy in Jordan Kyrou, who has had phenomenal seasons over the last 4 years? He's pretty much been, over the last 4 seasons, almost a point per game player, but he's been over 70 to 75 plus points the last 4 years. He's 26, 27 years old. Brings a lot of shots. He's had, especially fantasy-wise, over the last 3 seasons now, over 250-plus shots. That's 3 straight seasons of 30-plus goals. Again, like I just said, 70-plus points as well, 36 blocks, 50 hits, and now in that. If somehow Montreal could land a guy like this and slide him into the middle, and that's what I want to talk about, is I do believe the Montreal Canadiens still need to work and address on bringing in a top 6 centerman to this group. I don't think Kirby Dach is really the guy that you want on your second line center position right there. I think he's more of a bottom 6 centerman. I still think he's got a lot of skill set, but he's playing with guys in Patrick Laine and Ivan Demidov. And I just personally haven't seen Kirby Dach really bring that much to the table from where he's been. And I know he has he was a high draft pick, and there's the potential that we've seen in the past, but he has struggled, and the injuries have been a concern as well throughout his career so far. So again, kind of reel myself back in here. This team is a juggernaut. This team is a fantasy gold mine. I like what they've done so far this year, and I'm going to guys like Noah Dobson for a bounce back year. I know he dropped from 70 points to 40 points, but I think playing with a guy like Lane Hudson, especially, I believe both those guys are going to be on the first power play unit. I'm going after these guys because of how skilled they are.
In the fantasy realm, I'm going to wholeheartedly back you here on I want a piece of them. In terms of already just buying into, because of these moves and what we saw from them at the end of last season, I think maybe we need to be a little bit more patient, because what I wanted to get out of the way is Caulfield, Demidov, Patrick Laine, if he's still in the mix, Zach Bolduc, Newhook, Doc, Slavkovsky. Aside from Nick Suzuki, there is no one's game 200-foot back-to-back wise that I trust, Steele. Yeah, there's value here offensively, but in terms of what this team needs to do to, like you said, address some of that maybe more of a thin position up the middle, those questions still need to be answered, because as much as, yes, on paper, we're loving it, we're loving the moves, the future looks bright, that doesn't always immediately translate into success, and that could impact fantasy value just a little bit. So we definitely are going to call them a winner, We'll put them in the mix as the free agency current winners along with the Canes and this Florida Panthers team that I'll touch on very quickly. Utah, shout out to what they've been able to do. Adding JJ Peterka, that's a win. I put them right there in honorable mention. The Golden Knights add a 100-point player steal. How could they not be in the conversation as winners so far? So I wanted to get that out of the way and quickly because we'll keep the losers chat a little bit shorter. If you're not going after what's happening in Florida, wake up, because Bill Zito, once again, the masterclass. Marchand, we thought he was going places. Wrong. Ekblad, we've covered it all. I guess maybe this is just a quick mention, but the Cats have to be, once again, Steele, big-time free agency offseason winners. And if this team runs it back and they even make a Stanley Cup final, this is one of the best franchises or dynasties or runs or whatever you want to call it that we've ever seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's been an absolute masterclass. I really have nothing else to say about this.
Me neither. No, we can just mention that and move on to losers. Right from the winners to the losers, but I feel like he deserved a little love.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we've talked about them the last 4 episodes. So, yeah, there was really nothing else to mention.
How about 30 episodes? Because it's been a while.
They're definitely winners in the in that category as well. Losers, though, of free agency. Let's start with these LA Kings, more like LA Peasants at this point, because this is absolutely atrocious what I've seen so far. I'm not quite sure what the deal is. And first of all, trading away Jordan Spence for a couple of picks, but you bring in guys like Cody Ceci, 31 years old, Brian Dumoulin, 33 years old, Anton Forsberg, 32 years old, Joel Armia, 32 years old, Corey Perry, 40 years old. However, I do like the signing because he's still an absolute pest out there. And again, Andrei Kuzmenko as well. So, which they did, obviously. They signed him to a 1-year deal for $4.3 million. These are very interesting contracts to me because you're just backpedaling. Like, this is not, you've been smoked now in the first round by the Edmonton Oilers the last 4 years. And you really believe that those contracts that you just gave to CC Dumoulin those guys are going to be able to stop Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl when you go up against them next time in April? Like what are we doing out here? So, it's very bizarre to me to see this. And again, to go kind of looking at their breakdown line by line. I don't quite understand what the thought process was and how this is going to make you a better team, because up front, like, they're still absolute juggernaut. Like, I still love Warren Fogle, Trevor Moore, Quinton Byfield had a really good season. Adrian Kempe is one of the best scorers in the league as well. On the blue line, like, this is bad.
Well,
like, I feel bad for Darcy Kemper going into this season.
There is 2 things that I think need to be said here, because on paper, yes, it's not pretty. And fantasy-wise, I would be very careful of what you do in terms of trying to invest in this blue line in LA. But when you also look at how they finished the season 8-2-0 last year to finish 4th in the Western Conference deal, in terms of goals against, only the Winnipeg Jets last year allowed fewer goals. So I think some credit needs to be due to this team being very much their pieces are greater than the sum of their parts, or whatever that saying is. They play great together as a team, because I'm with you. Individual value and on paper, it's a little bit kind of dodgy. However, like you said, the strength, Kopitar, Kempe, Kuzmenko, Fiala, Byfield, we like what we've seen from Laferriere. Fogle, Deneau, Trevor Moore, the third line of our dreams, the perfect fantasy hockey streams. And I'm not trying to be a poet, other than everything that you mentioned is Ken Holland, maybe perhaps playing it too safe. Armia, Dumoulin, Ceci, my goodness, these are not sexy moves. If it pans out, though, Steele, maybe he's playing this game of trying to prop up the real sexy pieces they have. I'm still not seeing it. He's taken a lot of heat in the media, and I think accurately. This, to me, is the perfect situation of let's see how camp shakes out. Let's see what this team does the rest of the offseason, and then maybe we reassess what we think this Kings team can do and offer fantasy-wise.
Yeah, and we're gonna talk about the Oilers and Jets in a minute, but the Oilers are also in this tier of losers throughout the offseason so far. So maybe the Kings aren't as bad off as I just said, and as I'm projecting them to be. So we'll talk about the Oilers. We'll talk about the Jets. Swing and a miss after the break on the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to hit that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review for your boys here, Flip Livingstone.
And almost that 2K steal.
Over to you, my friend. Oilers, why are they in the loser category for you?
When you look at how this team was able to really at times in the postseason get to the point where we were buying into them as a Stanley Cup champion, right? There was moments there until we saw how good Florida is and how they came together. It was the unsung depth pieces, Steele, really getting it done for this Oilers team throughout the postseason. Corey Perry, Connor Brown, John Klingberg even. All of those players are gone. And we know if there was any team, like just literally cover your eyes, and one team that needs to make a move in goal, it's the Edmonton Oilers. And I know Jake Allen isn't exactly would have been the be-all and end-all. And there was Oilers fans out there perhaps pining for an immediate move, and I'm not trying to say one was out there. But when you've lost those players, and sure, getting Evan Bouchard $10.5 million per year on a 4-year deal, I think would fall into the winning realm of things. They need to address what's going on with that blue paint. And look, people are going to go, it's the NHL right now. There isn't options out there. Then create one. Maybe move a forward, do something. And look, you've said this yourself. Evander Kane, when he's healthy, he is a really impactful player. So add him into the mix in terms of players you've now lost, Steele, and you still have to run back Stuart Skinner and Calvin Pickard next year. Talk me off a ledge here, but I might put them at the number one biggest losers so far because how close they are to a cup final and a win. To me, I'd be a little bit rattled if I'm an Edmonton Oilers fan headed into next season right now.
Look, I mean, to me, the only thing they did right was bringing in Andrew Mangiapane on a 2-year
decent deal.
2-year decent deal, $3.6 million AAV. So 2-year, $7.2 million deal for Andrew Mangiapane. I'm honestly not even a huge fan of the Evan Bouchard. Their hand kind of got pushed to do this. The Edmonton Oilers were pretty much forced to give this contract to Evan Bouchard because the Carolina Hurricanes were swarming on an offer sheet potentially at $9.5–10 million. So they got forced to give him that extra $1 million because of the potential offer sheet from Carolina. But look at the guys they've brought in and look at the guys they've lost. Not even just this year, but last year as well. Offer sheeted Dylan Holloway. Offer sheeted Philip Broberg. You trade Evander Kane for a 4th-round pick. You still have guys like you signed Trent Frederick to this 8-year deal. I'm not sold on that yet. Adam Henrique's taking up a good chunk of it. You signed Curtis Lazar. You let Connor Brown walk. And then again, you don't even go out there and address your goaltending issues when you could have gone out and potentially traded for John Gibson. Like that could have been the number one guy.
Good point.
So I think what has been done so far, it's not pretty.
Sure.
A lot of it, you can get away with because you have the 2 best players in the world in Draisaitl and Connor McDavid.
Of course.
Like Yeah, I'm not a fan of what they've done, and this is why they are in the loser category.
And look, Zach Hyman being out in the postseason made things, I think, a lot easier for that Florida Panthers team. And let's just remember that a reset into the regular season, Hyman, McDavid, Draisaitl, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, Evan Bouchard, those are 5 guys that you most definitely still want on your fantasy team. But when we're talking about winners and losers, gals and gents out there, these will have impacts on what you should be doing with these players come fantasy draft season. And I think that's very much translate here, Steele. And let's just get this out of the way quickly. This Winnipeg Jets club has swung and missed. They brought in Jonathan Toews, Gustav Nyquist, and I know the Johnny T 2.0 here, and we like to call John Tavares also Johnny T. Jonathan Toews here, this is a risky move in terms of if you want to rely on a guy up the middle where clearly this team is thin, Steele. I don't think there's too much to be said here other than they swing and a miss. Jonathan Toews, Gustav Nyquist aren't going to be the answer for me. They then lose Nikolai Ehlers. To me, they're clear losers. And I know they will still be heard from in that Central Division. Yes, Kyle Connor's a superstar. Connor Hellebuck, we love the blue line, even those unsung heroes, Sandberg in that. I think they for sure fit the mold as losers, and I don't know how you feel at all about that Nyquist signing, but it's not something that turns the page for me at all. Fantasy, of course, but even affecting their ability to win games.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different way to go about things than what they've done in the past. And, I'm not going to say that they're, 100% losers because I actually don't mind some of these signings and I don't mind the way they've gone a little bit. They'll have the best goaltender in the National Hockey League in Connor Hellebuck.
That helps.
So it does help a lot. So, I like what Jonathan Toews had to say in his press conference with the Winnipeg Jets, media and their organization about like he doesn't want anything given to him. He'll start on the 4th line, and if he proves himself, then he can move up to the top 6 potentially. But I'm fine with these Jonathan Toews, Gustav Nyquist, Tanner Pearson, Cole Koepke signings as well, because the top line of the top line of Kyle Connor, Scheifele, and Velarde is one of the best in the league. So that's completely fine. Then you still need someone to get Cole Perfetti going on a consistent basis. It's
happening, Steele. It's finally going to happen.
It's finally going to happen. But is Jonathan Toews and Nyquist going to be those guys? Only time will tell. We're going to find out this year. But Nyquist had a really good season last year as well. So just because he's 33, 34, and Jonathan Toews hasn't played over the last 3 seasons or 2 years as well, that doesn't mean it's going to go down south. It's obviously going to take some time to find some line chemistry, but those are, if I'm Cole Perfetti, those are guys you want to play with. Like Jonathan Toews is still an absolute out there, even though he hasn't played in the National Hockey League the last 3 years. And then I love guys like Nino Niederreiter. Vladislav Nemestikov is pretty decent as well. I think Nino Niederreiter is one of those really good draft picks in the 15th to 20th round. To me, he's always a draftable player because he's just consistent in what he does across the board. The blue line is okay. Josh Morrissey and Neil Pionk are absolute draftable studs out there as well. You kind of get a little bit in the gutter with the guys like Sandberg and DeMello, Stanley, Luke Schenn, but defensively, that's a very good blue line. They are going to wear you down because that is a big, bruising, blue lining defensive core right there in Winnipeg.
100%, 275 goals for this Winnipeg Jets club last year. Finished them at 4th in the NHL, Steele. And how about the number 1 power play last year at 28.9%? That offense is going to go. Who's going to be a key part of it after those top few names? We'll continue to break it down for you guys. At this point, in my opinion, Steele, they just haven't done enough. And look at what they have done in the postseason. Fallen short. So if you're talking about perhaps not adding, maybe it's not a loss, but we're sitting middle. Maybe it's still not good enough. However, we've got our NHL wide 32 team breakdown. That's going to continue to roll on the rest of the week. We've gone through the first 15 or so teams. Now it's into the elite area of the top 15 teams that you need to be targeting. Every single club, Steele, top 5 fantasy targets. We'll be back tomorrow, and holler at your boy.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, please check out the Locked On NHL Podcast, where you can hit the subscribe button, the follow button, and leave a 5-star review. For all of us out there, Locked On Podcast Network doing wonderful things, Locked On NHL Podcast doing wonderful things. So continue to show some love to the entire network across the board. We appreciate you out there. We love you out there. Thank you so much for holding us down throughout the summer months right now. And we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.